Egypt is in a new movement in Djibouti. This new project is connected to the port and logistics. Since the issue is related to a port, it will directly concern Ethiopia. Previously, 2 years ago, when Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi visited Djibouti, he signed an agreement with Djiboutian President Ismail Omar Guelleh. This agreement would allow Egypt to get a location for a logistics and transit zone in the territory of Djibouti. Now, reports are emerging that the matters are escalating and developing into commercial port activities. This is the point that makes the issue concern Ethiopia. Djibouti is Ethiopia's sole port provider country, and since Egypt is a country that wishes for Ethiopia's downfall, the movement is seen as one that draws attention. In the current situation, Djibouti is the only country providing port services to Ethiopia, one could say. There are services being provided by the Berbera port of Somalia as an alternative to the Djibouti port. However, the service it is providing to Ethiopia compared to the Djibouti ports is insignificant. Due to this, in the current situation, it is possible to say that Ethiopia is dependent on Djibouti's port services. Any external issue that occurs in Djibouti regarding Seagate port services will concern Ethiopia. Djibouti is led by the 77-year-old elder, Ismail Omar Guelleh. It is said that his birthplace and country of growth is eastern Ethiopia. He speaks Amharic fluently. He has been leading Djibouti since 1999 according to the European calendar. That is to say, 26 years in power. The ruling party of Djibouti he leads is called the People's Rally for Progress. It is apparent that the people of Djibouti want a new change other than the president. Information indicates that an election will be held in Djibouti in the coming May. Before that, however, a constitutional amendment was made. The constitutional amendment made the presidential candidacy limit open by removing it. This is said to be a preparatory work to enable the current leader, Ismail Omar Guelleh, to be a candidate again in the next election. Citizens and politicians in Djibouti, who are dissatisfied with this, continue to raise questions. In connection with this, the political heat in Djibouti has also been observed to rise in the past weeks. Whatever happens in Djibouti, as long as Ethiopia is dependent on Djibouti's ports, it will concern Ethiopia. Accordingly, it is apparent that Ethiopia must pay close attention when Egypt, which does not wish Ethiopia well, increases its presence in Djibouti. Egypt has cast its eye on Djibouti's ports and is expressing its desire to participate in investment in Djibouti. Djibouti has established its source of income on its port, and it has the desire to convert all of its sea gates into ports. It has gone beyond its single existing port and has built other gigantic ports and still has a plan to build additional ports. Saudi Arabia has entered the first port on a lease. Information is emerging that Egypt, which set foot in Djibouti in the name of a logistics zone, is now being drawn into the same port construction process in Djibouti. It is recalled that Egypt had previously signed a Memorandum of Understanding MoU with the government of Djibouti, with the intention of building a gigantic transit and logistics center in Djibouti. This agreement was signed on November 8, 2024, according to the European calendar, or 2 years from today. This MoU between the two countries, Egypt and Djibouti, was said to be a memorandum of understanding marking a new chapter in their strategic cooperation, and its goal is to upgrade port infrastructure, build roads, enhance their economic ties, linking the two countries, and jointly carry out efficient logistics operations that serve key players in the regional trade network. It is also recalled that Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi later traveled to Djibouti and held discussions. And so, when Egypt searches and hunts down Ethiopia's neighbors, from Eritrea, Somalia, and Sudan, and claims to establish friendship, it is clear that it is entirely with Ethiopia in mind. Observing Egypt, in the current situation, placing its focus on Djibouti and negotiating with the Djiboutian government on port and logistics, the situation is not just seen as a bilateral relationship like Egypt-Somalia, Egypt-Eritrea, or Egypt-Sudan. Both Egypt and Djibouti are sovereign countries in their own right. Just as any country establishes bilateral relationships based on mutual desire, Egypt and Djibouti also have the protected national right to do so. In a bilateral relationship between two countries, a third country cannot claim to have a concern. However, if the relationship between the two countries is thought to be capable of harming the interests of a third country, then it seems mandatory to monitor the situation closely, at the very least. Recently, Egypt's foreign minister, Sameh Shoukry, was seen explicitly stating that Ethiopia should not have access to the Red Sea. In connection with the Renaissance Dam gird issue, Egypt, which suffered a heavy defeat on the Nile issue, has now turned the geopolitics toward the Red Sea and the scouting of Ethiopia's neighbors. In connection with this, Egypt is moving forward by setting its own policy. This Egyptian approach of scouting Ethiopia's neighbors one by one and saying let's be friends is undoubtedly part of its policy or project to put Ethiopia in an isolated position. Egypt, which did not look back at Somalia, a country that has been stateless for over 3 decades, during these years, claiming it will deploy a peacekeeping force in Somalia, is undoubtedly doing so with Ethiopia in mind. The Egypt-Djibouti relationship is clearly and publicly part of the Horn of Africa, and East African countries project that Egypt intends to create with Ethiopia's neighboring countries. After suffering a great defeat regarding the Renaissance Dam, Egypt is now focusing and working on 2 parts of Africa. The first is on the countries of the Nile Basin, and the other is on the countries in the Horn of Africa. The countries called the Nile Basin include 10 countries, including Ethiopia and Egypt. Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, and South Sudan are found in this category. Regarding the countries of the Horn of Africa, the countries Egypt is focusing on are Ethiopia's neighbors. These are Eritrea, Somalia, and Djibouti. All 3 countries are not in the Nile Basin. Although Eritrea was an observer country in the Nile Basin Initiative, it is not considered an active participant. Recently, President Isaias Afwerki, who had a stay with an Egyptian Arabic station, was heard saying that Eritrea is a basin country. The other neighboring country of Ethiopia, Sudan, is a country whose leaders are always implementers of Egyptian interests. The leader of the partial administration of Sudan, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, is seen to have a strong relationship with Egypt. In the current regional power alignment, Egypt is seen to be rallying Sudan to its side. In the past weeks, movements of officials have been observed between Cairo, Asmara, and Port Sudan, which is the temporary seat of the Sudanese government. Discussions were held, especially in Cairo and Asmara. General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the partial administrator of Sudan, who sent his prime minister to Asmara a few days ago to consult with President Isaias and his officials, himself then entered Cairo, Egypt, and was seen consulting with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Egyptian media reports indicated that the main topic of discussion between the 2 leaders was Ethiopia. The dam having been inaugurated and completed, Egyptian officials who are in a state of high political frustration continue with their negative comments and military threats regarding the dam, and al-Burhan's arrival in Cairo was just days after el-Sisi issued threats against Ethiopia. It is recalled that the Sudanese prime minister was in Asmara prior to his meeting. El-Sisi had made many efforts to create an alliance of Egypt, Eritrea, and Somalia around Ethiopia, but the efforts failed entirely when the Somali president, Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, defected at the last minute. General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who thought he had defeated his rival, General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, tried to substitute Somalia and align with both Cairo and Asmara, but General Dagalo recently launched severe and continuous drone attacks that broke the back of al-Burhan's army. The attack shook the capital, Khartoum, as well. Furthermore, Dagalo also snatched a critical Darfur city called Al-Fashir from al-Burhan's hands. This event has greatly alarmed Egypt, a supporter of al-Burhan. General al-Burhan, who is racing to enter the regional political conspiracy without properly resolving his country's internal affairs, is recalled to have entered Cairo regarding the dam and declared that el-Sisi's position is my position. Egyptian media also widely reported this voice of renewing his pledge. Following their discussion, el-Sisi and al-Burhan were repeatedly reported to have condemned Ethiopia's approach, stating that they will not accept Ethiopia's unilateral actions on the Nile, which is a common type of reporting. The statement regarding the discussion between the two generals at the time was issued by the Egyptian Presidential Office. The Aram online report, which quoted the president's office statement, indicated that the Sudanese general Abdel Fattah al-Burhan said in this discussion that we should have a strong, common position regarding the dam. The same report added that the two countries also said they will work together to protect their mutual interests on the Nile. Even though the dam is completed, Egyptian officials are still clinging to their position that they have been pushing for 10 years. That Ethiopia must be pressured or sign a binding agreement. Furthermore, reports indicate that they are in a new fear-based politics, worrying that Ethiopia might build new dams on the Nile. Instead of returning to the new Nile water-sharing agreement that the basin countries agreed to and ratified, Egypt is still holding on to the former colonial-era agreement. Egypt's stubborn position, which continues to this day, is that I will not accept the new water sharing in a new form with a new agreement, and Ethiopia should not carry out any development projects on the Nile. The other concern of Egypt is that the Grand Renaissance Dam, which Ethiopia built and inaugurated in 14 years, might inspire other basin countries. In connection with this, Egypt carried out a lot of negative propaganda work before the dam's inauguration. However, none of the efforts bore fruit. Even today, Egypt is not resting.